The Zephyrian High Command had made their decision in the sterile chambers of their crystalline war room, 10,000 light-years from the human frontier. General Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Corps had become too dangerous to live. "The human has cost us 12 systems," hissed Commander Vextal, his chitinous mandibles clicking with agitation. His tactical innovations are unprecedented. The assembled council of the galaxy's most feared military alliance nodded in unison. They had ruled the stars for millennia, their combined fleets crushing any species that dared resist their expansion. But then came the humans, a young race that should have fallen within cycles, yet somehow held the line for 3 standard years. And at the center of their resistance stood General Chen. "Traditional warfare has failed," continued Vextal. "The human anticipates our fleet movements, turns our own strategies against us. But he is still flesh and blood. We send the Shade Collective." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Shade Collective were the galaxy's most feared assassins, beings who existed partially outside normal space-time, capable of infiltrating any location, eliminating any target. They had never failed a contract in 4,000 years. General Marcus Chen sat in his modest quarters aboard the dreadnought Indomitable, reviewing tactical reports by the pale light of distant stars. At 52, his hair had gone prematurely gray from the stress of command, but his eyes remained sharp and calculating. He had been expecting this moment for weeks. The first assassin materialized behind him, a Vorthak shadow dancer, its form shifting between dimensions. Most beings wouldn't have sensed its presence until the molecular blade found their spine. Chen spun his chair around and smiled. "Right on schedule." The Vorthak froze, its blade inches from where Chen's head had been. In that moment of confusion, Chen's hand moved with practiced precision. The ceramic knife he'd been holding sliced through the assassin's throat before it could phase back into shadow space. "One," Chen said calmly, stepping over the dissolving corpse. The second assassin was already in position, a Catherian mind-ripper perched in the ventilation shaft above. These creatures could lobotomize a victim with a thought, turning their own memories into weapons of self-destruction. But as the alien focused its psychic assault, it encountered something unexpected. Chen's mind wasn't just protected, it was a trap. The human had spent years training with Tibetan monks and Vulcan meditation masters, learning to compartmentalize his thoughts. The Catherian found itself caught in a labyrinth of false memories and psychological barriers that Chen had specifically designed for this encounter. The assassin's scream was purely mental, but its death was very physical as Chen put a plasma round through the ventilation grate. 2. The next 3 came together, Nexari phase shifters who could walk through solid matter. They materialized simultaneously in his quarters, one behind, one to each side. Their plan was flawless, executed with mechanical precision. Chen had already left the room. The trio found him in the corridor, but something was wrong. The human wasn't running or hiding. He was standing in the exact center of an intersection, hands clasped behind his back, waiting. "Gentlemen," he said pleasantly, "I've been studying your species for some time now. Did you know that Nexari phase shifting requires perfect molecular synchronization, and that a localized electromagnetic pulse can disrupt that synchronization for approximately 2.3 seconds? The EMP charge he'd embedded in the corridor walls activated. For 2.3 seconds, 3 Nexari assassins became solid matter occupying the same space as the ship's bulkheads. The laws of physics are not negotiable. 3, 4, 5. The remaining assassins came in waves throughout the night. A hegemony biomorph that could replicate any form. Chen identified it by its failure to replicate the subtle scar on his left hand from a childhood accident. Something not in any public record. A quantum zealot that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. Chen had prepared for this by studying human intuition and precognitive training, something the purely logical alien mind couldn't comprehend or counter. Each death was more than elimination, it was education. Chen had spent months analyzing every recorded Shade Collective assassination, studying their methods, their species, their limitations. Where most targets focused on defense, Chen had prepared offense. By dawn, 17 of the galaxy's most feared killers lay dead throughout the ship. But the 18th was different. Silthara was the Collective's best, a being so ancient and skilled that she had assassinated 3 galactic emperors. She had been studying Chen just as intensively as he had been studying her kind. She found him in the observation deck, watching the sunrise over the planet they were defending. A world called New Geneva, home to 3 million human colonists. "You knew I was coming," she said, her voice like whispered silk. Unlike the others, she didn't attack immediately. "For the past 6 hours," Chen confirmed, not turning around. "You're Silthara. You killed Emperor Maxis of the Andromedan hegemony by convincing his own guards to betray him. You ended the Centauri War by eliminating both faction leaders in the same night. You're not just an assassin, you're an artist." "And you are not just a general," she replied, studying him with eyes like black stars. "You orchestrated this entire scenario. The others weren't just killed, they were dissected, studied, used as learning experiences." Chen finally turned to face her. "My species has a saying, know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Sun Tzu wrote that 2,500 years ago. Tonight I knew my enemies better than they knew themselves." Silthara circled him slowly, her form shifting between dimensions. "But do you know me, General Chen?" "I know that you're the only one who might actually succeed," Chen said honestly. "I know that you've been watching me for weeks, learning my patterns, my psychology. I know that, unlike the others, you're not here just for the contract. Then you know why I must kill you." "No," Chen said quietly. "I know why you think you must. But I also know something your employers don't." "And what is that?" Chen gestured toward the viewport where New Geneva turned slowly in the morning light. "They sent you to kill one human general, believing that would break our resistance. But they don't understand what they're really fighting." Silthara paused in her circling. "They think this is about me," Chen continued. "About one human's tactical innovations. They don't realize that I'm not unique among my species. I'm typical. Every human general, every human soldier, every human civilian has the same capacity for adaptation, for learning, for turning disadvantage into advantage. Kill me, and they'll promote Colonel Williams. Kill her, and Captain Rodriguez takes command. Kill him, and a sergeant will step forward." The assassin's form solidified completely as she processed this information. "We are not a species of followers dependent on singular leaders," Chen said. "We are a species of leaders who happen to follow each other. That's what your employers never understood about humanity. We don't just fight wars, we learn from them. Every defeat teaches us, every victory teaches us. And now, thanks to your colleagues' sacrifice tonight, we've learned how to fight the Shade Collective." Silthara stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then, to Chen's surprise, she began to laugh, a sound like crystal chimes in a cosmic wind. "You magnificent, terrifying creature," she whispered. "You've turned this entire assassination into a training exercise." "The lesson was always more valuable than my survival," Chen agreed. "Though I do prefer both." The most feared assassin in the galaxy looked at him for another long moment, then bowed, deeply, respectfully. "General Chen, I believe my employers have made a fundamental miscalculation about your species. Most species do initially." Silthara turned toward the viewport. "I will tell the collective that you are dead. You will, of course. Prove me wrong at the most dramatically appropriate moment. Of course. And then, General, I suspect my people will learn the same lesson the rest of the galaxy is beginning to understand." "Which is?" The assassin smiled, an expression that had been the last thing 3 galactic emperors had ever seen. "That perhaps it would be wiser to make allies of humanity than enemies." As she faded back into shadow space, Chen returned his attention to the sunrise over New Geneva. In a few hours, he would need to brief his staff on new anti-assassin protocols. By evening, every human ship in the fleet would be equipped with defenses against phase shifters, mind rippers, and shadow dancers. The Zephyrian High Command had sent 18 assassins to kill one human general. 18 had died, and humanity had learned 18 new ways to fight an enemy they had never faced before. Chen smiled as he watched his species' newest world turn toward the light. The galaxy was beginning to understand what it meant to go to war with humanity, not because humans were invincible, but because they were infinitely adaptable. And adaptation, Chen had learned long ago, was the most dangerous weapon in the universe.